Good morning. We're thankful to have Matt Augustin with us this morning. He's the principal here at the Christian school in Grinnell, and he's been a part of our ministry here at Oxstrong for quite a while. We're thankful for his attendance and just support and just his heart, and you'll get to hear that today. Again, Skip would have wished he could have been here, just had other things going on today, and so I think that's the second time in about 5 years that he's missed, but I know his heart is with us, and he's cheering for Matt as well. So, Matt, stage is yours, buddy.
We're going to have to start passing along a kitty jar for all those weddings you're going to have to pay for. So. There you go. Well, thanks, Nate. So yes, my name is Matt Augustine, and when I started coming here a couple years ago, I never thought I'd be in front of you guys and kind of sharing my story. But it's amazing how God works. So as Nate said, I'm the principal here at Central Iowa Christian School. I'll get to that here in a bit, but just kind of wanted to share a little bit more about my past, how we got to Grinnell, my wife and I. But I guess the underlying message today is going to be just being strong and being courageous, and you'll see how that ties in with Central Iowa Christian School this year. Kind of fitting that last song was No Longer a Slave to Fear, because that's kind of where I'm coming from. I never thought that I would be in the position of an administrator, because I was telling myself time after time, that's something I can't do. Something maybe I don't want to do, and I was talking myself out of it. So we'll get to that. A little bit about myself. Originally from Knoxville, Iowa, only about an hour away from here. My wife is from Knoxville as well. She's a couple years younger than me, but her name is Lauren, and I would say she's truly my better half. And I kind of get a little emotional. But some of the best compliments I've ever gotten is, wow, Matt, you really married up. Or you've outkicked your coverage. So I'm still getting those today, and I'm pretty proud of those. So since our dating days, she's really been challenging me. So in college, I tried playing on the golf team, ended up playing 2.5 years of golf in college, and that was really hard for classes for me. Statistics, that was one thing that I always struggled with. And then finally, third time's a charm, because you kind of, if you remember in college, you get to a certain point where you can't drop that class anymore, and then you'll take that grade, whatever you've earned. Well, I got to that point a couple times, and I'm like, I'm going to drop it because I don't want that on my transcript. So the last time that I ended up taking it, I remember I was going to school in Graceland. My wife was going to school in Truman State, and it was about a 2.5-hour drive. Made that drive every weekend, but she wouldn't let me leave until my homework assignments were done. So that's just a challenge that she had always had for me, and earned a B+. I'm proud of that B+. So that's what I owe to my wife. Same thing with church. So I grew up Lutheran Missouri Synod, and kind of a traditional setting. And I remember one Christmas pageant, and my mom, she kind of developed a plan with a few of her other friends. So when the choir finished their pageant, there was a plan to actually applaud for them, because that was just, church it was very formal at that time. It wasn't a celebration. And when I started going to church with my wife, that kind of changed my mindset on what church can be. And that's where I would say that I kind of transformed being like a reactive Christian to kind of being proactive. So just another thing I owe to my wife. We together we have two boys, Will and Luke, 6 and 4. So Will's in his second year here at the Christian school, and Luke is about ready to turn 4. But it's just kind of, I was thinking about all the things that you do as a father that you never thought you'd do. I never thought I'd own a 31-foot motorhome, but now we do. Just because the boys they like being outside, and we went and made our COVID purchase this year, and that's just kind of developing that relationship with us a little bit more. They want to go camping. We're actually going camping this week. We're going to be going up to Decorah, so we're looking forward to that. I've never played soccer in my life, but now I coach 2 soccer teams. So just things that you do as a father. It's neat, and it's super rewarding. Okay, so once again, principal here. I would say my oldest son, Will, being here, he was also encouraged me to be hey, wouldn't it be cool if you're my principal, Dad? So another thing with having a child and having a family, how that just kind of changed your mindset. So that's a kind of another story that kind of leads up to me becoming the principal here at Central Iowa Christian School. So getting back to my education, the self-doubt that I've always had kind of goes back to my college days. Right before college, when I was still in high school, we did student teaching back when you could go into the schools. Now it's just kind of crazy to think that schools will have volunteers come in with all the policies and guidelines with COVID. But I spent about 4 hours a day with his name was Randy Wilson. Some of you guys might know him from Knoxville, Iowa, but he was the PE teacher, elementary, and that's where I really got my love for education. But that self-doubt, that fear, and it was just fears that were irrelevant, and it was money. When I was going into college, I was like, you see what teachers make, and you're like, I don't want to live off of that, and it was a worldly fear of just something that you can't take with you when you move on from this earth. But that was kind of that first part where I really struggled of telling myself education isn't for you. Went to Graceland University and ended up getting a business degree from there. When I was at Graceland, I always would just look at the professors, and I was like, wow, what a life, academia. We had one professor, he would just hang his suit up in his office, and he would play, back before pickleball was cool, he'd play pickleball a couple hours a day, and then when it was time to teach his class, he'd put on his suit. But just having those conversations with professors, just kind of looking at their instructional practices from day one, like education was for me, but I was telling myself, that it wasn't the right move for me. After Graceland, this is how we got to Grinnell. I started working for Wells Fargo. I spent a few years with the Wells Fargo here in Grinnell, and as a personal banker, once again, those education tools that I was passing on to our customers, when high school senior, junior would come in and they get their first account, that's where I really enjoyed being a banker, that education piece. My wife and I also fell into a pretty rough group here, where most of the people in that group were teachers. So it's just kind of another place where God kind of just placed us with the right set of people here, and the group of couples that we started hanging out with seemed like either the husband or the wife was in education. So that kind of led me to kind of second guessing, hey, am I in the right career? So after a few years at Wells Fargo, went back to school finally for education. After about 8 years of telling myself this wasn't for me, went back to Buena Vista, did some night courses, and ended up at North Mahaska. So I was a business teacher at North Mahaska for 9 years, and it was a great place to work. And while I was down in North Mahaska, ended up picking up my master's in educational leadership. So kind of making that next step. But about halfway through that program at Drake, same program Brian Conway went through, we kind of did the same classes at the same time. We were in the same cohort. And about halfway through that, I started telling myself, this isn't for me. I don't know if I want to be a principal. You start hearing the stories, the stories of long hours, the stories of dealing with sets of parents, things like that. And I just thought, it wasn't for me. It wasn't worth it. A different position at North Mahaska opened up. So I went from the classroom into like an instructional coach role. And that was kind of a good jump into working with teachers, in a different, with a different set of tools. So instead of, speaking to students every day, I was kind of working with teachers every day on instructional practices and best practices. So that kind of built some confidence within me. And then after a couple years of doing that, we ended up, our oldest boy, Will, was getting close to school age, and Central Iowa Christian School was the landing spot for him. So that was last fall. And then the conversation started about, okay, what are our next steps? Because within our family, because our oldest son, he's in school. I'm driving half hour down to North Mahaska, half hour back. Even if I leave super early, it's still 4:30 or so before I get up here, and we got to pick the kids up from school. So that was starting to pose an issue, with our family, time constraints, soccer practices, things like that. About that same time, Central Iowa Christian School started having conversations within their school board. Hey, we should hire an on-site administrator. So Central Iowa Christian School has been around since 1983, and they've always had some form of like a virtual administrator or someone just kind of putting in a few hours here and there. But this was the first year that they really wanted to take that leap of faith and hire someone to be on site. So those conversations started, and that's when my wife and I started those conversations as well. And we had to get over that fear. We had to get over that fear of job security at North Mahaska. We had to get over the fear of, personally me, is this something I can do? Is it, something that, yes, I've had the in-class training for, but can I get over those hurdles in my mind? So my wife and I, we sat down, we prayed, and then the interview actually happened. So I sat down with the school board president, a couple other board members, interviewed for the position, and it just clicked. I'm like, this is the right job for me. And I think I was ready, and I think Central Iowa Christian School, they were ready to make that jump. Then COVID hit. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with our school. It's west of town. It's kind of an old farmhouse that they've added on to, and traditionally it serves about 44 to maybe 46 kids a year. Well, this year that was going to be a challenge in that farmhouse. So after I ended up taking the principal position, first thing I started doing was working on our COVID plan. And we quickly found out that it was going to be very hard and very difficult for our kids to be masked up all day. We're talking, kindergarten through 8th grade, but a lot of young ones where we're asking to keep their mask on all day. When I was sitting down creating this plan, my wife and I were talking about, the Christian church would be perfect for us. But it's like, how do you even start that conversation? Because we had a perfectly good building out there. We don't really have a budget where we can just go and say, hey, for this year, to help our school kind of stretch its legs, help our kids stretch out in the classroom, where can we get that money from if we could even work something out? So created our COVID plan, and it's just in the back of our mind, it was like, this year is going to be a really challenging year for us. I should also, I kind of failed to say at the beginning, Joshua 1:9, okay, Central Iowa Christian School, each year they have like a verse. That's kind of the foundation for either project-based learning or the foundation for curriculum for that year. And Joshua 1:9 is the verse that they chose this year. And this verse was actually chosen before they released kids on Friday, March 13th, to go home for the rest of the year. So this was already in plan.